Joining us in studio, it's Executive Vice President and General Manager Nick Caserio. Nick, great to see you.
Fellas, good to be here.
Jacksonville week, big week indeed. Let's review a little bit what went down against the Broncos. Very close game, but unfortunately unable to get over the hump, Nick.
Yeah, similar to some of the other games we've been in. Had a couple games literally have come down to the last play of the game, and that was the case here the other day against Denver. So had some opportunities. In the end, just the red zone and some of the inability to and Johnny and I talked about this before the game, that was going to kind of be the key to the game. So had some ops, couldn't necessarily capitalize on those opportunities, and in the end came up a little bit short. So did some decent things, lost some players during the course of the game, but still had our chances. So in the end, it's going to come down to kind of our basic fundamentals and execution. If we can just do some of the basics a little bit better, probably give ourselves a little bit of opportunity to finish some games.
Nick, when you and I started that, I used to ask you about the keys. I used to say, hey, give me keys on both sides of the ball. And I started thinking, we're really good on special teams. I better ask the third key, the third phase. And the third phase was really good. Recovered the muff punt, got the block kick, almost had them pinned at the one, very, very close to that. Special teams continue to be great, and they gave you a lot the other day. That seemed to be a big win for the special teams.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Jay Knowles continued to provide the spark there in a return game, and Danico's kind of done what he's done throughout the course of his career. So the kicking game is really about hitting yardage, trying to create additional plays. Can you create a first down with a punt return? Can you create an explosive play in some other capacity? Can you control field position? See, Denver did a pretty good job as well. Their punter did a good job of flipping the field in some situations, kind of forcing us to go on a longer field. So for the most part, we played pretty consistent in the kicking game. So it's a combination of the players, the coaching, the right mindset, and kind of, when you go out in the field, you understand what the job entails. So for the most part, we've done a pretty good job, to your point, in that phase.
Nick, CJ had to leave the game, obviously, and they did throw a flag. Then they picked it up. A long explanation to D'Amico. Has that rule kind of changed, evolved a little bit? We saw something with Aziz last year at Jacksonville. Has it changed a little bit?
Yeah, it has. It's evolved. There's certain plays that you can review. There's replay assist that's involved. So there's been a big topic of discussion in a lot of the league meetings, just trying to figure out what's reviewable, what's not. In the end, you're just trying to get the play right. And if there's a foul, if there's an infraction, so be it. If there's not, should a team be penalized if there's not an infraction? So we understand there's a subjective nature sometimes to some of the calls, but in the end, you're just trying to get it right. And so there's maybe a few more people involved. And when they talk about it goes to replay assist, we had the opportunity to replay assist. And then they come to the conclusion, whatever it is. So whatever the outcome is, whatever the result is, we'll just handle it and deal with it accordingly.
Nick, I thought about this last night. I was kind of flipping through social media, and I saw somebody make a post about, hey, here's another team running six offensive linemen, as if it's kind of become a little bit more of a trend in the league. And we've been doing it, and it's been successful. Obviously, the other day, it's got to be short-circuited because Titus goes out and Blake has to go in. But what's been the success of that sixth offensive lineman role for Blake and just using it all together?
Yeah, I'd say league-wide, it's whoever that extra player is it the third tight end, or you have somebody at that position that can handle that responsibility, or are you better served putting an offensive lineman in that spot? A lot of times you're blocking the same individual they'd be blocking as if you were one spot removed over. You're also seeing some players use defensive players or defensive tackles. So you're trying to get some size, some strength, create a little bit of a point of attack advantage if you can. So some of it's matchup based. Some of it's if you put this grouping on the field, here's what the opposing team is going to do offensively or defensively from a match standpoint. So, Blake's done a pretty good job with that. And to your point, Johnny, league-wide, more and more people are using that player in that role. So it's maybe you take one less tight. You get 8 linemen at the game every week. Right. So if you have an extra player, how do you utilize that player's services to get the most out of who's at the game?
So I'm going to go with that real quick, Mark. The offensive lineman the other day. So at one point, Titus has gone down. Then Ed has gone down, or for a little bit. Now Ed went back into the game. And I think we were down to, 6 offensive linemen at that particular point. Like you said, you can carry 8 to the game. How far do you go down the rabbit hole of if this happens, to have a plan just in case, oh man, all of a sudden we've got 5 offensive linemen. What if something happens?
Yeah, that's kind of a last resort
right.
or kind of ultimate catastrophe. But you have 8, so you're really going to have, the next inside player, the next tackle. And then if you lose one of them, okay, what is your option? Do you have to move somebody from inside outside? Do you move somebody outside in? So at one point we were down there with J-Pat was kind of the only lineman that was available, and then Ed went back into the game. So you kind of manage as you go. You just want the information, who's available, and then once you have the information at your disposal, then you can figure out, all right, what's the best way for us to line up and play. And we had games where we were playing centers at tackle. I distinctly remember a game against the Giants. We had our starting center was playing right tackle, and then we were playing the third tackle at left tackle. So you just got to figure out a way to make it work. I think this will be a good test, honestly, for both teams. We're dealing with some injuries that they incurred during the course of the game. So this is what you have the practice squad for. This is why you hopefully have enough depth on your team. So the games go on. It's not like we can cancel the game. So we're just going to try to figure out who's available, who's going to be healthy, and then put those players in a position to go out there and perform to their best of their ability on Sunday.
If it comes down to that again, I nominate Danico Autry to switch over. I mean, would he be the best
tackle? Danico Autry,
the best defensive lineman to switch over?
Sometimes
I don't know.
some defensive tackles have played tackle or they've played inside. So if we get to that point, we'll have to figure out who that player is.
Exactly.
All right, so Nick, concussion protocol. We saw Nico go through it. You have a couple of players on it now, most notably your quarterback, Titus Howard. Tell us about the concussion protocol, how that works. They're tested on a certain day, and they have to overcome certain thresholds or whatever?
Yeah, there's certain steps within the process, and you have to clear all 5 of them before you're declared through the concussion protocol. There's a physical component, a physical activity, and then there's a contact component, which you get in practice. I mean, which you get in pads, or if you're not wearing pads, you kind of have to simulate that. But I would say the league's done a good job of implementing something that every team can follow. And I would say from our perspective, the health and safety of the players is the most important thing. So we're not going to race a player through the concussion protocol if they're not ready for it. So, because in the end, you're dealing with something I would say that is very, sensitive. So we just want to make sure we're doing the right thing by the players. So, but they have to go through certain checkpoints. There's computerized tests. There's physical activity. There's a contact component, and then they have to go out there and do it over the course of practice. And then once they get through that, then if they're cleared, they're cleared. If they're not, they're not. Then they just kick it to the next week. So depending on the severity of the injury and the nature of the injury, that'll determine how long the player is going to be out, which the league has done a good job of, whether it's new helmets and the technology is involved in the helmets or the hats that we wear and the Guardian caps that we wear in practice. There's a heightened emphasis and the heightened awareness because in the end, the health and safety of the players is the most important thing.
Have you ever had a concussion?
The only one that I really remember is when I was playing middle school baseball. I distinctly remember it. I was playing center field and I was going to the gap at full speed, and the left fielder, we collided and I literally was out. I was out for multiple minutes, and then I got up. And I probably shouldn't have gone back in the game, but I'm hard-headed. So I remember standing at the plate and trying to focus on a pitcher, and it was pretty blurry. Honestly, I shouldn't have been out there.
Right.
So, I think my father thought I was an idiot for doing what I wanted to do, but, I was pretty rockhead.
Oh, he wanted to err on the cautious side.
So, but I'm like, no, I'm good. But that was the only one that I remember. I had my jaw slightly fractured when I was playing, but I didn't get knocked out. But other than that, I've been pretty fortunate relative to that situation.
Here's the seniors yelling at me, "Get up, you're good." I'm like, I see 4 people, and there's only one there, I'm pretty sure, at that point. If CJ cannot go on Sunday, and D'Amico mentioned the other day, he said rarely has somebody gotten a concussion and then come back the following Sunday. But if he's not able to go, Nick, your thoughts about Davis Mills stepping into that role and the responsibilities that he's going to have against Jacksonville?
Yeah, the quarterbacks each week prepare as if they're going to play. So, Davis goes through that process each week. Graham is going through that process as well. So if CJ can't go, then there's a good chance that Davis is going to play. Davis has played a lot of football, has familiarity with the system, has a lot of experience. Anytime if you had the opportunity to get kind of a full week of practice, full week of preparation, it certainly, makes a difference. Davis works hard. He's a smart kid, and he's gone out there and played competitive football as long as he's been here. So we'll work through the course of the week and try to figure out, what makes the most sense. But, if CJ can't play, then I'm sure Davis and Graham will be prepared and try to take advantage of the opportunity.
Davis has been through a lot because you had Tim Kelly, Pep Hamilton, of course, Bobby, and now Nick Cayley. How different is this now from what Davis was running with Tim Kelly, say, in 2021?
There's probably a little bit of crossover relative to, and we've talked about this, relative to systems. So there's some concepts are going to carry over, some principles are going to carry over. You might have something that is more specific to one system relative to another. Davis's situation, he's seen a lot of, I'd say, offense, and he's a smart kid, and he's able to adapt and adjust. And we probably have carried different elements throughout the years that he's been here, that I've been here. So in the end, you're trying to figure out who's the opponent, what do we need to do, what are some of the things that are going to have application to Jacksonville, and then construct a plan accordingly.
All right, it is Jacksonville. So let's get into the scouting report. But, Nick, I want you to focus on a couple things. Earlier today, we found out Jacksonville traded for Jacoby Myers, who I know you have some history with. Secondly, they made a trade a few weeks ago where Tyson Campbell went to the Browns, and they brought back in Greg Newsome. So with those two in particular, how does Myers kind of help their receiver room? How has Newsome kind of fit into their secondary? Because he can play nickel, he can play outside. He's a little different than Tyson. And then give us a scouting report on the Jags.
Yeah, for sure. Specific to Jacoby's he's been a very productive, very instinctive receiver. A little bit more inside the formation, but he can play on the perimeter as well. He's got good quickness. He's got really good hands. He's a smart kid. He's tough, and he's as his career has progressed, he's improved. He played as an undrafted rookie. I had to play a lot of snaps there, when he came out in the draft. But Jacoby's done a good job with his opportunities. So just given some of the injuries they've sustained, I would say it's just specific to their offense. I mean, Washington, Parker has kind of emerged, and his role has kind of become more pronounced as the year has gone on. Brian Thomas is a very productive player for them. So they've kind of had some players that have been in and out. They've had some injuries. Diami's been in and out. But I'm sure Jacoby is going to probably help their offense quite a bit here. And then specific to Newsome, when he was in Cleveland, to your point, Johnny, he kind of played a little bit more inside the formation on the perimeter because they had Emerson, they had Denzel Ward, but the times where he had to play in a perimeter formation, he was able to go out there and be competitive. It looks like he's playing primarily on the perimeter in Jacksonville, so they've made some changes. So he's kind of been on the perimeter. Travis has kind of been in and out. Now Travis is on IR. But looks like he's playing mostly on the perimeter. I would say the Jags, specifically looking at their team more big picture. Defensively, they're one of the better run defenses in the league. I think they're third in the league in run defense. So big, strong front, really good edge player in Hines Allen. Ola Khan is among the most productive tacklers in the league. So really formidable front. And they've kind of had a lot of players in and out of the secondary for injuries or trades. If everybody is healthy, Jordan Lewis really gives them a solid presence inside the formation at nickel. He had the interception in our game, and they've kind of had some rotating pieces there at safety. They just put Eric Murray on IR. But in the end, good front, really good run defense, good edge rusher, and they've taken the ball away. I think they're tied for third in the league in turnover margin, which unfortunately they took the ball away from us 3 times in the first game. And offensively, their run game has been a big part of what they're doing. And I'd say Trevor's played really clean, efficient football. And the one thing that he's probably taken advantage of over the last few weeks, he's had a number of rushing touchdowns. So he's a factor in the red area because he is big, strong, and he can make plays with his legs. And they've been able to capitalize on that. And then specifically their specialists, they arguably have 3 of the best specialists in the league. I mean, Cam Little made a kick from 68 yards with room to spare. Logan Cook's one of the best punters in the league. Mattisix, one of the best long snappers. So they have a good specialist group and a good core coverage group. I would say the Lane kid from Navy really stands out on the perimeter, and we couldn't really block him as a gunner. So they present challenges as a team, and they're 5-3 for a reason because they've played good football, and they've been in some close games, and some of them won, some of them they haven't. But overall, Liam's done a good job of kind of putting a program in place and putting them in a position where they're competing every week.
Nick, it's bizarre to think that if you get to the 50, you could be in scoring range here with that record field goal. And Jacksonville hit it. Dallas tried one Monday Night Football. And we talked about this with the touchback at the 35. Field position is just crazier than ever. Scoring range and starting drive position.
It's really that 50 to the 35, like that area. Okay, what goes on? Some teams are equipped to handle long field goals. Some teams are more inclined to go for it on 4th down. So what's the risk reward? What's that trade-off? That's something that you're going to look at. I would say specific to Jacksonville, obviously field goal range probably extends a little bit further out than some other teams, so it could affect their calculus. It could affect our calculus on the other side of the ball. So those are all things that we're going to have to evaluate and look at as we get into the game planning element.
Nick, I thought something was interesting. I think it was a couple weeks ago that Greg Olson, who does a great job on Fox, he was talking about what he thought would be a trend with the new kickoff rule, and he related it to kicking field goals, especially in the low red zone. You get down on the low red zone, maybe inside the 10, that more teams might go for touchdowns there and eschew the field goal because they feel like they kick a field goal, they kick it off to the other team, they get the ball at the 35, all of a sudden one big dig route and you're in field goal range and the field goals will kind of cancel each other out. You think that's a possibility? I mean, you kind of talked about that, the decisions you have to make from 35 to 50, but are some of those also in the low red zone that you have to make too for that particular reason?
It's always going to be case by case, always going to be team by team, and you're just going to have to look at what's your strategy, how do you want to handle that situation, and I think teams are still working through some of the mechanics and the nuances. I was reading a stat the other day. I think there have been 79 or 80% kickoff returns, which is amongst the highest in however many years. So the league wanted more kickoff returns, so you're getting more kickoff returns. So how do you handle some of those other situations? How does that affect your decision making? I think as we get to the end of the year, every team's probably going to do whatever they feel fits their team best.
Along those lines with kickoff returns, I was thinking about this the other day because there are that many more kickoff returns. Are you seeing more and more teams, I don't want to say be creative with what they do with a blocking scheme, but I know when this first came out, Mark and I talked about all the different things you could do. You know, you could zone scheme a kickoff return because of the way the blocking is set up. Have you seen more teams kind of be creative in that way?
In the end, the kickoff returns kind of become a one-on-one matchup between the coverage unit and the return unit because you're in such a condensed space. Essentially, you're 5 yards apart from one another. So how much is there for scheme? I mean, you'll see some double teams. That's probably the extent of it. Maybe if there's a specific coverage player that you're trying to account for, you can get to the double a little bit quicker. As far as scheme outside of that, there's some nuances that are involved. You could create space in the coverage unit, and then if the coverage unit is on top of you, then if you can't get the guy blocked, then you're getting the ball inside of 20. So I think this is like everything. It's a process, and everybody's going to kind of look at what makes the most sense. I think the subtle adjustment they made where you have the ability to kind of have that third player a little bit further back relative to last year. So how do you use that? That probably gives you more flexibility than anything else.
Nick, in the Jags win over the Raiders, it went to overtime. Liam Cohn had the option to put the Raiders on the field first, but he took the ball with the 10-minute period. He cited, well, maybe we want to grind out the clock here. Raiders did get the ball back, but your thoughts on that? Do you guys discuss these things, philosophy, that sort of thing?
Yeah, there's a strategy that goes into it, and each week you're kind of look at it and just understanding what is the other team's propensity to, what do they want to do in those particular situations. And then you look at your team, what do we want to do? How do you want to handle it? So it's the same thing. Do you defer the kickoff? Do you take the ball? What goes into that? So everybody has a philosophy that they espouse. In the end, you're going to do what you feel is best for your team.
Without Devin Lloyd, it doesn't feel like they've had too much of a drop-off because Ventrell Miller, and I remember him in week 4 last year, he came in and did a really good job against us. If Lloyd plays, we know what he brings. But if it's Ventrell Miller at linebacker for them, how much changes, if anything at all?
Yeah, they run their defense. Ventrell's a good football player. I mean, he was a 4th-round pick or wherever, 4th or 5th-round pick. He was a good football player coming out of Florida. He was tough, good straight line speed, very instinctive, highly productive. So they're almost, to a degree, 3 for 2 inside. And they obviously moved on from Muma because they felt between Devin, Olakon, and Ventrell. Whoever played, they would feel comfortable. So he's done a good job when he's played. He's been a productive tackler, so they don't really have to change too much of what they're doing defensively.
Nick, if CJ can't go, that puts Graham Mertz in the on-deck circle, for lack of a better way of putting it. How about his progress? You put him on the 53 prior to the start of the season, and he's been the 3rd guy. How's he doing?
Yeah, no, he's worked really hard. I mean, he's getting a lot of his reps in practice, and really what we've done is between him and Davis, they've kind of rotated on the show team. But when Graham's been in there, you really want to go in there and still focus on your techniques, focus on playing quarterback. You're doing some things that are specific to the defense, but take the play, look at it through the lens of the Houston Texans, because it might be because we try to call the play for the look team in our vernacular. So you go through kind of your process. Now, if there's something specific to that team, hey, we want you to do this way, read the play this way, but you still want to go get in the huddle, call the play, get the snap count, go through your progression. Graham's worked really hard. He's made some progress physically relative to his lower body strength, which is a point of emphasis. So he's certainly working hard, making progress. So if the roles are adjusted or changed this week, then you got to be prepared because whomever the backup quarterback is, essentially you're one snap away from potentially being in a game.
Okay, so we're nearly halfway through an NFL season, but we're 3/4 or more through a college season. So at that point, Nick, are you making adjustments and things to what hey, we got to make sure we see these couple of guys, or hey, these guys are kind of popping. We want to see them, live, get kind of a read on them live. And then how many mock drafts are you reading at this time of year?
Yeah, we're winding down here. There's only so many.
I'm joking about that part.
Call the month of football that's left. We've probably seen everybody that we need to see. Now, if a player hadn't played because he's been injured, maybe you get to see the player live. But we're winding down here. We're going to actually start we're going to tweak our process this year, maybe start the discussion on players a little bit sooner than we normally do. Understanding there's certain players that are going to declare and be draft eligible. There's other players that maybe they're going to declare they're going to go back. But we're going to try to keep the discussions moving here a little bit. But, our scouts have done a great job. We get a lot of information on a weekly basis. I've been fortunate enough to see a number of games here through the course of the year. So it's important. I feel like it's important for me to do the work so that when we're having a discussion with a group, I can somewhat talk in an educated fashion so we can have productive dialogue and discourse back and forth.
Nick, I might have asked you this last year, but for the sake of the audience, I'll ask again if I did. It's Salute to Service Day, and if you had to pick a branch of the armed services to enter, we're going to send you away for a few years, Navy, Army, Air Force, Marines, or Coast Guard. Which one are you picking?
It's a great question. Have you asked me this before?
I don't know, but
they're all important.
We're going to let it rip.
They're all important. I would say...
But which one would you want to do?
Maybe the Navy or the Air Force, I would say.
Okay.
So
fly jets?
If I had a lean. So I'd have to obviously learn. So I don't know if anybody would want me behind a jet.
Okay, we'll see how good you are on the spot. So if you join the Air Force and you go to Top Gun, because we know you would, because that's the 1% of the 1%, right? And so you had Maverick and you had Viper and you had Hangman. What would be your call sign?
Oh, you guys can make up my call sign. That's not up
John
to me.
Carroll.
In the comments.
I've seen all the Top Gun movies, so I don't see a lot of movies, watch a lot of movies, but
you would fit in a Top Gun really well.
I've seen the Top Gun
What's
movies,
the John Carroll nickname?
The Blue Streaks.
Blue Streak.
Streaks.
That's it.
Blue Streak. Yeah.
That's your call sign. All right.
Done.
Nick, thanks a lot for joining us. Good luck.
Thanks, fellas.